The first episode of an anime is arguably the most important part of the whole show. They have the massive task of entertaining us and introducing us to a whole new world in 20 minutes with the sole purpose of making us go back to keep watching the rest of the episodes. It is rare for an anime to be considered great if it doesn't have an incredible first episode to serve as an appetizer for the adventure ahead. But which anime has the best first episode? Today we're going to find that out. This video is actually a sequel to a video I made months ago where I rated the first episodes of these anime based on two things: how immersive the world building was and how much I wanted to keep watching after that. But this time we are raising the stakes with a whole new scoring system and a list of 8 new goated anime recommended by you on the comment section of that past video. The anime we'll be analyzing today are Dandadan, Naruto, Code Geass, Talentless Nana, Dr. Stone, Tokyo Ghoul, Psycho-Pass, and Oshinoko. I am pretty salty that I had to watch that last one, but I will discuss that when we get there. And for this new scoring system, each anime is going to be judged across these 5 categories: the hook, world building and atmosphere, characters, story and pacing, and viewer investment. Or in other words, how badly I want to keep on watching. Each category will be ranked from 1 to 10, making 50 the highest possible score that one of these episodes can get. As a quick disclaimer, I recognize that in the last video I wasn't completely objective, which is why today I will be implementing some bias protection rules to make things as fair as possible. This means that I will be analyzing these episodes as if I knew absolutely nothing. No manga knowledge, no outside context, and no nostalgia points. Today, it's all about episode 1. And finally, before we go into the analysis, on my last video I spent too much time recapping the episode more than actually analyzing them. So if you want to actually watch them, please go watch all of them because I consider that they are all good, and then come back and then we can analyze them together, yeah? So without further ado, let's begin with Dandadan episode 1. That's how love starts, you know? Dandadan tells the story of 2 high schoolers. Momo Ayase, who is a popular it girl who believes in ghosts and is in love with an actor called Ken Takakura, and Okarun, a nerdy boy that loves aliens but has no friends. One day, Momo notices Okarun is being bullied and decides to help him, even though they had never met before, which is very sweet. But due to his lack of social skills, Okarun takes this as an opportunity to dump all of his alien knowledge on Momo, who replies by saying she doesn't believe in aliens but instead believes in ghosts. This leads to an argument between the 2 students over whose beliefs are actually real, which culminates in them going out at night to different spots to bust each other. Momo goes to a hospital with high alien activity and Okarun goes to a cursed tunnel. And for everyone's surprise, both things turn out to be real. Momo gets abducted by perverted aliens and Okarun gets possessed by the spirit of an evil woman who asks the boy to let her suck his dick. But as everything seems to be going down the shitter, Momo awakens spiritual powers and Okarun gets a new possessed form that helps them escape the alien ship. After a very cool fighting scene, they agree on the existence of both aliens and ghosts. Momo offers Okarun to help him with his possession and remembers that she never asked him for his true name. And she is left speechless after he says that his name is none other than Ken Takakura. So first, let's talk about the hook, which in my personal definition should be around the first 5 minutes of the episode. Did this episode immediately grab my attention? Yes, but I wouldn't say it was because of the first scene, which is not bad, but it was mostly because they have a banger for an opening song. For the actual episode, the first scene is just Momo dumping her boyfriend for being an asshole, which then leads to her talking to Okarun, but I wouldn't say there's a huge narrative hook from the get-go. I think the art style, animation, and pacing are impeccable, but that can also be very subjective, so I'm not going to be including those things as much in the rating. I think as the episode progresses though, there is a really cool intrigue built towards whose beliefs are actually real between Momo's ghosts and Okarun's aliens, which help you get through the episode and be really invested. But again, I don't think the initial hook is that strong. And including the opening theme in the rating wouldn't be fair because some of these episodes don't have an opening theme at all. So I'm not going to include that, which makes me want to give Dandadan's hook a 7 out of 10. Now let's consider how this world is built. For the setting, the episode starts in a regular school in a regular town in Japan, which is very common because the main target audience for manga is usually school kids in Japan. And I think a school setting can be really overdone and really boring, for me at least. But I think in this case, it serves as a really cool starting point to contrast with all the other ridiculous places that we visit later on, like the hospital, the tunnel, the spaceship, and etc. I think a big highlight of Dandadan, for me at least, is that in this very first episode, it manages to not only explore the relationship between Momo and Okarun, which would go into the character section, but it also presents us this world that has aliens and ghosts, and that makes the possibilities for adventures pretty much infinite. The tone and vibe of the episode and of the show in general, I would say, is pretty bold. You know, there's a lot of sexual jokes. I've even heard people say that this is a Gunnar anime, but I think they're all chuds because it really isn't. But it is true that at least this first episode is loaded with sex jokes, with Turbo Granny offering Okarun a sex exchange and Momo's boyfriend asking her to either lend him money or let him smash, which is insane. But I appreciate that they never make a joke about sex between Momo and Okarun because they're literally kids. So for the fact that this episode in 20 minutes introduces us to the relationship of the characters, aliens, ghosts, has really bold and creative style, and has an amazingly directed action sequence in the end, I am going to give this a 9 out of 10. Now, how strong were the character introductions? Like I said before, at the beginning, it seems like Momo is going to be a very self-centered it girl, and Okarun is going to be a very nerdy, shy boy, and that is fairly true, but I really like that they meet in the middle and they also kind of overlap a little bit, because Momo goes from being a self-centered girl to helping a nerdy boy with no intention of any self-benefit, and then Okarun goes from being really shy to making fun of Momo for her beliefs, which is literally what she was helping him overcome towards the bullies. For me, that makes both introductions really memorable, and it gives them a very interesting dynamic, a very charismatic chemistry between them. They might feel a little bit tropey, but in my opinion, that is an issue with the majority of anime, so that's why I'm still going to give this a 9 out of 10. Next up, story and pacing. I think I've already glazed the story enough, and even if story and pacing are two very different things, I think the episode excels at both. Like I said, maybe the first scene or the first couple minutes of the episode aren't as captivating to some people, but for me at least, from the directing side of things, everything flows perfectly. I think the episode tells a really simple story that's easy to follow, but it's not dumb by any means. And they make a great setup for how they're going to deal with Okarun's possession, or what are Momo's powers in the episodes to follow. Trying to be absolutely objective, I am going to give this a 9 out of 10. And finally, how much did this episode stick with me, and do I want to keep watching? This is the point where I mentioned that this is actually my 4th time watching this episode, and Dandadan is one of my favorite from the last generation of anime. I watched it in theaters when the first 3 episodes came out, then I watched it at home, I watched it with my girlfriend, and now I just watched it for this video, and I keep loving it every single time. That's still just a side note though, because like I said, we have the bias protection rules, but I do think that it says a lot that I've watched this episode 4 times and I never get tired of it. Maybe if you're not that much into romance, you will have a harder time connecting to the story, but then it balances that out with all the weird shit that happens in the second half of the episode, so there's a little bit for everyone to pick from this episode, and I think that's great. In my opinion, all the emotional beats are hit. The animation, even though it's subjective, is beautiful. The action scene and the soundtrack for it are impeccable. And the final scene of Momo being so shocked that Okarun's real name is Ken Takakura, like the actor that she loves, is really beautiful. But it also makes me want to jump immediately to the next episode. And even if it doesn't count for the rating, the intro is amazing. So with my bias aside, because I would give it a 10 out of 10, and knowing that a lot of people have actually tried watching Dandadan and it wasn't really for them, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, making Dandadan's final score a 41. Next up, Naruto Episode 1. Enter Naruto Uzumaki. 12 years ago, a tailed beast known as the Nine-Tailed Fox attacked a ninja village called Konoha. Many ninja fought and died trying to protect the village before the 4th Hokage was able to stop the attack by sealing the monster inside a baby, which cost him his life. Enter Naruto Uzumaki, a loud, annoying, and deeply unloved orphan kid living in the Hidden Leaf Village, also known as Konoha. We meet him right as he is vandalizing the Hokage monument and having the time of his life, but we quickly learn that Naruto is a kid that the entire village hates for the sole reason that he has the Nine-Tailed Fox sealed inside of him. Despite that, Naruto still enjoys being scolded and getting the attention of people, as he has no family or friends to talk to. He attends Ninja Academy but can't really perform any techniques beyond the sexy jutsu, which means he won't be able to graduate. One of his teachers tells Naruto that if he could steal an important scroll and learn one of his techniques, then he could finally move up to the next rank. Unfortunately, these were all dirty lies, as the teacher who told Naruto to do this is a mole that wanted to keep the scroll for himself. His main teacher, who's called Iruka, hunts him down and faces the evil teacher, who taunts Iruka by reminding him how the Nine-Tailed Fox killed his parents, which should make him hate Naruto. Iruka refutes this and says that he has never blamed Naruto for this, but instead sympathizes with the kid growing up as an orphan. Having heard this, Naruto locks in and learns the Shadow Clone Jutsu and goes absolutely thorough on the evil teacher. After that, Iruka finally tells Naruto to his face that he's proud of him and that one day he could even become Hokage. The hook. Again, this is an episode that I have to apply the bias protection rules to because when I was a kid, I would watch the shit out of this episode on Cartoon Network and I thought that it was peak. So, did the episode immediately grab my attention? Yeah. I mean, it did when I was 10 years old, but I also feel like if I was watching this for the first time right now, I would also be really captivated. Different from Dandadan, which starts literally at the beginning of the story, Naruto does a great job at showing us where the story can be at some point, you know? It shows us a huge fox and a dude standing on top of a huge frog, and it says, this is where the story can go to at some point if you keep watching. So my 10-year-old brain says, I need to see that again, you know? So I'm gonna keep watching. And that is for me the definition of an effective hook. But even after that, I think the contrast of that huge action piece to the mundane life of Naruto, seeing how he is failing at school and nobody likes him, but understanding where that is coming from, is also really effective. I don't know, I'm trying to be objective, I'm trying to take my 10-year-old brain out of this, but I think it's fire, so I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. Next, world building and atmosphere. The story is set in the Hidden Leaf Village, which in my opinion is a world with a beautiful design. And I don't know if it's because I watched it so much as a kid, but everything about Naruto feels very unique to that world, especially the clothes and the buildings, which I've always thought they're really cool. Watching it as an adult now, I think the overall tone and vibe of this episode, they're very chill and campy and fun for the most part, which then helps the emotional moments hit even more when Naruto is all depressed in the swing, which is a scene that every Naruto fan has tattooed on their memory. And since this world is so unique, it has a lot of really interesting concepts that it introduces us to, like the Hokage, Jutsu's tailed beasts, and many others that it introduces very clearly because, you know, the target audience for Naruto is still kids. So I think it does a really good job, but it's nothing out of the ordinary from what is expected out of one of the big three shonen series of all time. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Characters. For me, characters are something that Naruto both succeeds and struggles with at the same time. The episode does a superb job of introducing us to Naruto and his daily life and struggles, but other than that, I think most of the characters in the episode are pretty disposable. Especially the one evil teacher who was literally disposable and then just showed up later in a filler episode. Don't get me wrong though, because I do feel like the characters in Naruto are one of its biggest strong suits as the show goes on. But in this first episode, I feel like it's just everyone hating on Naruto, except for maybe Hinata and Iruka, and that's it. Iruka does play a really big role in the episode as he is the one that tells Naruto that he doesn't hate him, so it helps Naruto unlock some of his potential. But other than that, I think I'll give it a 6 out of 10. As for the story and pacing, I think the episode has amazing pacing, considering that in the first 7 minutes it gives us the flashback, the introduction to Naruto's daily life, and his struggle of being hated by everyone. So in 7 minutes, you are already emotionally attached to this kid. And having all of that by the 7-minute mark leaves the rest of the episode for the story to develop, which also flows really nicely, in my opinion. As for the story itself, I think it's pretty simple and streamlined. It doesn't have to be anything else, it's a show for kids. But even if it's simple, I think it's really emotional, and I love that moment when Naruto jumps and hugs Iruka after he tells him that he has graduated. It's just really cute, so I think I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. And finally, how much do I want to keep on watching? The episode does have a very impactful hook, and it ends with a really exciting promise to see what continues for Naruto now that he has graduated the Ninja Academy. But being absolutely objective, I think if I was watching this episode for the very first time right now, I would find it a little bit childish and predictable. But that's not a bad thing, because I think sometimes we all crave episodes or shows like that. At least we know that I was addicted to this when I was a kid, which is the prime target audience age. So we know that it's effective, and I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Making Naruto's total points 41 as well. We continue with Code Geass Episode 1, The Day a Demon Was Born. Code Geass drops us into an alternate history where the British Empire never fell, conquered most of the world, and renamed Japan Area 11 while stripping its people of their rights and identity. Super wholesome stuff. We meet Lelouch Lamperouche, who is a British student living in Japan who is insanely smart and has been quietly furious about the British colonization for years. He gets caught in the middle of a terrorist incident involving a stolen military capsule, which turns into a chase across the city that ends with Lelouch being cornered by a squad of soldiers that also killed a bunch of civilians. At this moment, one of the soldiers takes off his mask to reveal that he is Lelouch's childhood friend, but in that moment he is ordered to shoot him down. The soldier refuses to do so and is immediately shot in the back, further deepening Lelouch's rage against the British Empire. After this, the capsule opens and it contains a girl named CC, who in the chaos of the moment grants Lelouch a power called Gias, which is the ability to give any person an absolute and irresistible command. He uses this power for the first time to command the entire squad of soldiers to kill themselves and smiles at the possibility of what he can do with this power. First, the hook. I'm not even gonna lie to you guys, I fell asleep watching this episode. And not because I was bored or anything. It was interesting, it was just a little underwhelming in my opinion. So the very first scene, like I said, is Japan getting low-dipped by the British Empire, which geographically would be the US. And then we see this Chud kid saying that he will one day obliterate all of them. That aside, I do think that the episode does a good job of piquing our curiosity, of making us wonder what would happen if the US had chosen to get even more revenge after Pearl Harbor. But then after that, I think the episode takes a little bit of time to pick back up. We see Lelouch farming, playing chess. We're like, oh shit, I guess bro is really smart. And then the whole chase plays out and we get bombarded with information. We see evil politicians, mechs, superpowers, deaths everywhere. It's like everything everywhere all at once, and that's where the episode really picks up. So I think it's a little bit of a situation like Dan Da Dan, where it starts a little bit slower and then it rises and it ends on a really, really exciting note. So being objective, but also keeping in mind the fact that I fell asleep, so I had to rewatch this, I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. On the contrary, I think this is the best episode so far when it comes to world building. It not only drops us in a fictional fleshed out world just like Naruto, but it also introduces us to multiple factions and how they all interact, attack each other at the same time that we're following this Chud teenager in this chase. And it makes it really interesting. Simultaneously, I think the episode does an amazing job at showing how royally fucked the Japanese people are by the British Empire, which helps the viewer get on board with the absolute extermination that happens at the end of the episode. I also greatly enjoy the royal futuristic aesthetic that the episode has, and even though it's a very subjective thing, I am going to give this episode a 10 out of 10 for world building and atmosphere. As for the characters, I think they're all used perfectly, from the prince to the general to the classmates and so many more, but I think there's so many of them in this one episode that it prevents them from being memorable. Still, I don't doubt that they will be explored in cool ways in episodes moving forward, which makes me want to keep watching, which is for a different category. But for this first episode, they feel more like stereotypes of the characters than actual characters. Now, if we focus on Lelouch, I think his display of intelligence playing chess was pretty cool, but it's really devious how excited he was to make a bunch of soldiers commit suicide. But that in hand make me excited to see what the bro is going to do in this world with this power, which is why I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Now for story and pacing, I think world building and story go really hand in hand in making us hate the absolute out of the British Empire, to the point where us as the audience are really satisfied by the deaths of the soldiers. Like I said before, I did fall asleep in the first half of the episode, but it wasn't because I was bored. I just didn't have something necessarily to really care about at that point. But there's no major pacing issues and the story is really cool, and I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. And finally, do I want to keep watching Code Geass? 100%. I need to see this guy get revenge on the British Empire, and I am really excited to see how he's going to use that power to do so. 10 out of 10, and the final score for Code Geass is 40. We continue with Talentless Nana, Episode 1, The Talented. Talentless Nana opens on a school for gifted teenagers with superpowers living on a remote island, training to fight a mysterious threat called the Enemies of Humanity. In here we meet a quiet boy named Nanao who is bullied for being talentless, which made me feel like I was watching a lazy copy of My Hero Academia, but that wasn't the case. We then also meet a girl named Nana, a pink-haired transfer student who is bubbly, sweet, and immediately beloved by everyone. In this school, it is customary for students to keep their abilities secret, but Nana immediately lets everyone know that she has the power to read minds. After that, the episode plays it completely straight and simple, and it looks like another superpower high school anime. Nana bonds with Nanao over his past, and she keeps reading his mind to drive conversation. She even helps him to get the courage to use his ability, which is to nullify other people's abilities, which he then uses to cancel out a giant fireball another student had tossed at him. Now with his ability being public, Nanao suddenly turns into Giga Chat for the rest of the class and is encouraged to become class president. But then in the final minutes of the episode, Nana pushes Nanao off a cliff. It turns out that she is a government assassin sent to the island with no powers of her own. All of her mind reading was actually just cold predictions based on Nanao's behavior. After studying all her classmates and seeing Nanao's ability, she concluded that he would be the greatest threat to the enemies of humanity, which means he must be eliminated. So Nana cuts the rope that Nanao was hanging from, and he falls to his death. Did the episode immediately grab my attention? Nah. Like I said before, I felt like I had been tricked into watching a Temu version of My Hero Academia, which I don't love already. So I found it a little bit hard to get interested in this story in the first couple minutes. The initial premise itself is not bad. I'm just tired of seeing it being done so many times. But applying the holy bias protection rules, let's imagine that I watched this episode without ever having watched My Hero Academia, Mashle, Black Clover, The Boys, Invincible, or even Sky High. I think the premise of a character who has no powers living in a world where everyone has powers can be really interesting. And even though this show shares a lot of aspects with My Hero Academia, I also don't think that it doesn't have some unique aspects of its own. And being completely unbiased, I still don't think that the first scene or the episode itself has that strong of a hook. So that's why I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. World building and atmosphere. Again, the world in the show feels similar to a lot of other anime that take place in high school. We have bullies, introverts, extroverts, mysterious students, but the idea of them living on a remote island to fight an enemy that's on the other side of the world does give me curiosity to at some point learn what is on that side of the world. Also throughout the episode we have glimpses and nods at the possibility of the enemy already being on the island, which by the end of the episode we know is the pink-haired girl. But I do think that the suspense is drawn out really nicely, and the fact that the episode plays so much like a stereotypical high school anime makes the final twist hit so much harder. For those reasons, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. As for the characters, story, pacing, and viewer investment, I feel like I would be repeating myself if I just draw out each of these categories. So I'll just say that for characters, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Story and pacing, 7 out of 10. And viewer investment, 7 out of 10. I promise that I'm being as subjective as possible, but I think without that goated twist in the end, the episode would be mid at best. Making the final score for Talentless Nana, 33 points. We continue with Dr. Stone Episode 1, Stone World. Dr. Stone begins with Taiju, an enthusiastic and physically gifted high schooler who has been in love with the same classmate for 5 years and is finally ready to confess his love. Unfortunately, as he does this, a mysterious green light petrifies every single human being on Earth. 3,700 years later, Taiju wakes up in a world completely reclaimed by nature, where civilization is gone and statues of petrified humans are scattered everywhere. His best friend Senku, who is a genius child and woke up a little bit earlier, was mentally active inside his stone prison for all that time, counting each second and figuring out a formula to reverse the petrification. For a whole year they worked together to develop a way to dissolve the stone with bad droppings and wine they made themselves, until one day they are able to free a bird from its stone shell. Together they begin to rebuild science from absolute zero, and Senku announces with complete sincerity that they are going to use science to bring everyone back and explain the fantasy of the green light that turned them to stone. So, did the episode immediately grab my attention? Yes and no. Sadly, I already knew what happened because I have a friend who's a massive Dr. Stone fan, so it wasn't a surprise when bro got petrified in front of his crush, but that doesn't detract from the fact that it is a really creative premise that totally captured my curiosity. I also find it very endearing that this guy was able to remain conscious for almost 4,000 years out of the sheer will to tell this girl that he loved her. Bro is a cutie patootie. So considering I was pretty much spoiled of what happened and I was still so hooked, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. When it comes to world building and atmosphere, I think this episode is a little more unique compared to the other ones we've seen so far because there's not much lore or story introduced compared to the others, but just the atmosphere gets heavily carried by the mystery of the green flash, and it is so captivating. I also personally really enjoy post-apocalyptic settings, and this one feels even more unique because it's set thousands of years in the future, but it feels like the past because there's no science and no technology, and that is the main obstacle that the characters have to tackle. So overall, I like it, and I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. Characters. Like I mentioned, I really like the main character and his conviction to share his love to this one girl, but I'm pretty sure that if it was just him in this world, I would get a little tired because he is a little one-dimensional. But the addition of his best friend, who is a freaking genius, makes for a very interesting duo that could totally bring science back to the stone world. Together, they are charismatic and endearing, and I'm really rooting for Bro to get the girl at some point, but I would prefer if the main character was able to stand by itself. So I'm just going to give it a 7 out of 10. At the same time, I think this episode has really good pacing and it lays down the foundation for what seems to be a really intriguing story. I do wish there were more challenging stakes because I think Senku was way too cracked from the get-go, but I am sure they will be facing those as the show goes on. 8 out of 10. And now, do I want to keep watching Dr. Stone? Well, yeah, I actually kept on watching it. Now I'm halfway through season 1 and I really like it. Maybe the first episode isn't as perfectly executed as others in this list, but I still think it's pretty darn effective. So I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, making Dr. Stone's final score also a 41. We continue with Tokyo Ghoul episode 1, The Tragedy. Tokyo Ghoul opens in a version of Tokyo where ghouls exist in secret alongside regular society, which are creatures that look human but survive exclusively by eating people. Ken Kaneki is a shy student whose entire personality is being normal and liking books. He develops a crush on a pretty girl named Rise who shares his taste in literature. He asks her to go out on a date even though she seems completely out of his league, and she accepts. They go out and it goes really well right up until she bites a chunk out of his shoulder in an alley and reveals she is a ghoul who picked him specifically because he seemed easy to eat. Kaneki is devastating knowing that he is about to die like a chud, and Rise is about to finish the job when steel beams from a nearby construction site fall on both of them. Kaneki survives, but the girl doesn't. At the hospital, doctors save Kaneki's life by transplanting Rise's organs into him. He then wakes up unable to eat regular food, hypersensitive to everything, and with one eye that keeps doing something deeply alarming. Unfortunately for Kaneki, he is now half ghoul. He can no longer eat normal food, and the thought of eating humans makes his mouth water. He reasonably crashes out and he even tries stabbing himself, only for the knife to break on impact. He suffers an emotional breakdown and goes out to the streets fighting his urge to eat a person when he suddenly smells a delicious aroma that reminds him of his mother's cooking, only to realize it was a human corpse being eaten by another ghoul. More ghouls arrive and a fight breaks between them over the territory, and as that is over, the remaining ghoul recognizes Kaneki as a half ghoul who doesn't want to eat people and shoves human meat in his mouth. The hook! This episode has the same kind of hook as Naruto by dropping us in the middle of intense action and a really interesting looking place in the hopes of getting our attention. Does it achieve it? I would say yes, but maybe not as effectively as Naruto. But that could be my bias affecting my perception. I don't know. I think the intro is very intriguing. It has amazing style and action, and it contrasts really well with the very next scene at the coffee shop, which is Kaneki's introduction. But I do think that the girl that Kaneki is going out with being a ghoul is extremely predictable. Still, I don't think that really affects the episode because that reveal comes before the halfway point of the episode, so I'm just crying for nothing. And I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. World building and atmosphere. It's just Tokyo, but with ghouls. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do appreciate the glimpses that we get at the ghoul world, like the underbelly that exists at the same time as the regular Tokyo city, which I'm sure will be explored in future episodes. But for the moment, it's alright. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. For the characters, Kaneki is introduced as a very sweet and thoughtful guy that wants to take a girl out on a date to a bookstore. He is another cutie patootie, and then you get emotionally attached to this guy, which makes you really sad when he is going through the shitter in the second half of the episode. I actually felt really bad when he was crying at the fact that he couldn't eat normal food anymore. I also found the relationship with his friend very endearing, and I hope nothing bad ever happens between them. I really don't know if it does. Overall, I still think the episode is great when it comes to characters though, because we only care about Kaneki and that is who we get to write this entire episode with. So that's why I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. For the story and pacing, I think this episode manages to get a lot of things done in the 20-minute runtime that it has. It gives us the hook, the introduction to Kaneki, the illusion that bro is actually going on a cute date, tragedy, transformation, mental breakdown, and then some action at the end to resolve the main arc of the episode, which is him not accepting that he has to eat human meat. In my personal bias, I feel like it is a little predictable and it felt like other anime that I have already seen before, and maybe anime that came after Tokyo Ghoul, so they might be just ripping the feel of Tokyo Ghoul. But I understand that is my bias, and maybe if I was watching this as my first anime ever, I would be going absolutely crazy for it. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. But do I want to keep watching this show? Not really. I don't think I will. It just didn't blow my socks off. I did say really good things about it in the other categories, but I feel like it's missing something to make me personally interested to go back and watch it. Still, I know that a lot of people think Tokyo Ghoul is their favorite and is the best thing they've ever watched, so being absolutely objective, I am going to give this a 7 out of 10. Final score for Tokyo Ghoul, 38. We continue with our second to last episode, Psycho-Pass Episode 1, Crime Coefficient. Psycho-Pass takes place in a future Japan where a system called Sybil measures every citizen's mental state in real time and assigns them a crime coefficient, which is basically a numerical probability that you will commit a crime. If your number goes too high, you get detained, and if it goes way too high, you get executed on the spot by a gun called a Dominator. This gun has the power to decide if you live or die, basically. The story starts with a guy breaking into a high-rise tech building and shooting some robots to get to a mysterious man before cutting to the title card. We then follow Akane Tsunemori, a brand new inspector in the unit that enforces the system, and this is her first day on the job. She is very intelligent but slightly underprepared for the task at hand. A man recently became a latent criminal and takes a woman hostage. Both of them are already so stressed by the situation that their crime coefficients are through the roof. Back with the unit, we are presented with the enforcers, who are also latent criminals, used as hunting dogs by the system, amongst whom we meet the man from the first scene again. The suspect is hunted down a rundown block and the enforcers eliminate the man, but now they also want to eliminate the hostage just because the guns say so. Akane refuses and tries to find another way, even going to the lengths of shooting the enforcer guy. But sadly she doesn't succeed and the woman gets shot with a non-lethal paralyzer to get detained. And basically the episode presents the question, if a machine decides what justice looks like, is it still justice? Again, we have a hook similar to Tokyo Ghoul or Naruto, where we are dropped in the middle of action, but this time instead of being a flashback, it seems like it's something in the future, which makes me want to get there eventually and see what all of that is about. Was I immediately hooked though? Not really. I think this is another episode that builds more towards the second half when they introduce this whole conflict with the hostage lady, which was insane. But since we're rating the hook here, which is the first 5 minutes or so, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. For world building and atmosphere, I think Psycho-Pass is one of the best of this list so far. We are thrown in this cyberpunky world that feels so much like ours, and it low-key already is. Thank you, Palantir, you motherfuckers. But even if I had seen this when it came out, which I think it was 2011 or something like that, I would have still been really captivated by the world. I think all of the artifacts and social rules and factions are introduced very smoothly, and I am greatly interested in seeing what are the repercussions of having guns that can determine your fate. I'm going to give this section a 9 out of 10. As for the characters, I think the fact that the protagonist is very intelligent but also new at her job helps us as the audience traverse this world a little bit easier because of how the exposition is directed at her. I honestly really enjoyed her character. I loved that she had the ovaries to shoot the criminal guy to save the hostage, which sadly didn't work, but still, I mean, it's the thought that matters. And all the other characters I think are okay, so I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. And for story and pacing, I will say again that I almost fell asleep watching this. Not because I was bored, not because it wasn't interesting, maybe I'm just becoming an uncle that can't stay awake. But like I said before, I do think that the episode takes a little bit of time to build up that intrigue, just like it happened with Code Geass. During the first half, we are introduced to very interesting things, but not necessarily super entertaining, which are two very different things. But I do think it's a great story and it's decently paced, so I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. And finally, do I want to keep watching Psycho-Pass? Fuck yes. With Code Geass and Dr. Stone, Psycho-Pass makes part of the shows that I actually plan to pick up eventually. I'm watching Dr. Stone right now, so I'll get to this one at some point, but I really do want to see where the story will go. That's why I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10, and it makes the final score, again, 41. And finally, we have the absolute behemoth of an episode that is Oshinoko Episode 1, Mother and Children. Oshinoko opens with an insane 90-minute premiere episode that has absolutely no business being as devastating as it is. We meet Goro, an OBGYN who is a massive fan of Ai Hoshino, a rising idol pop star from the big city. It seems weird at first for a 30-year-old to be so much into a 16-year-old idol, and it low-key is, but in reality he follows her to carry the legacy of one of his patients who sadly passed away at a young age. One day, Ai shows up at his hospital with a secret pregnancy and he ends up being her assigned doctor. But right before the birth, Goro gets murdered by a stalker outside the hospital and wakes up reincarnated as Aquamarine, one of Ai's newborn twins. His sister Ruby is also the reincarnation of the patient who passed away before. Then we spend a chunk of the episode watching Ai raise her kids while juggling her career as an idol and aspiring actor. The episode then explores the intricacies of the show industry in Japan, the mystery of the biological father of the twins, and the relationship of Ai with her kids, which makes you fall in love with the family dynamic until one day she gets stabbed at her front door by another stalker and dies in her son's arms. Aquamarine, now a child watching his mother bleed out in his arms, decides he is going to find whoever is responsible for his past selves and his mother's death. Before we talk about the hook, let's talk about the fucking runtime. 1 hour and 22 minutes. This movie is longer than The Aristocats, Fantastic Planet, Fantasia 2000, the Daft Punk movie, all of these goated by the way, and it still has the audacity of being called Episode 1. To me, that's ridiculous, but the episode does make up for it by being actually good. I am definitely not the target audience for this anime. I don't like idols, I don't like J-pop, and this is the first reincarnation anime I've ever watched, and I was still pleasantly surprised. So with those things in mind, I was wondering how I was going to rate this episode, because with an hour and 22 minutes, if this anime was cut into the more traditional 20-ish minute episodes, the entire content of that first episode would be distributed in about 4 episodes, almost 4 episodes. So considering this episode is almost 4 times as much content as all the other episodes on the list we've seen so far, I am going to subtract 4 points of the final score. I know that makes absolutely no sense, but that is the only solution that I could come up with right now, and I still think that is fair. The hook. We could say that the hook for this episode is the same as Naruto, Psycho Pass, Tokyo Ghoul, by first putting us in the concert and then bringing us to the hospital. But in all honesty, I think the main attention grabber of this episode comes at the 14-minute mark with the assassination of the doctor. Was I immediately hooked? No, not really. I actually started the episode being really disinterested, but not bored. So I think that if you're someone who usually enjoys this kind of anime, you would actually be into this. So I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. Similar to Tokyo Ghoul, in a way, the world building and atmosphere of the show is just Japan. But that's honestly all it needs to be, because it then takes us to places like the idol industry, TV, and other show business stuff. But it does it really smoothly, so I think it's all good. The tone and vibe of the episode are pretty campy and chill until it gets shattered by those moments where people get killed, especially at the end. But I think they accomplished a really good balance and I have no further complaints. So I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. Now, characters I think is where this episode actually shines, because we have so much time that we actually flesh out the majority of the characters, even to the point where we know that the manager's wife takes care of the kids so she can get rich, divorce her husband, and then marry a more attractive and younger guy. I was also very curious at the fact that the twin sister is the reincarnation of the patient that died God knows how long ago. Where was his soul waiting for the chance to slip into the baby? You know, was she in a limbo? Was she following the doctor? I don't know how that works, and I don't know if it is explored in other episodes, but I was really like, what? How? Besides that, I think the main character, Aquamarine, cooked name, but he is pretty chill. He is a good vessel for us to explore this world. And then Ai, who is the main idol, is a very strong character, and her final speech to her son is heartbreaking. So I'm going to give it a 9, even though it is a score that it's only getting because of how long it is and how much time we spend with the characters. For the story and pacing, we have another small issue, which is that I fell asleep. I swear I watched all of these on different days, so it's not like I was tired and this was the last one that I watched. It could be because I wasn't expecting the episode to be so long, so I got a little bit bored. But I also think that the episode has a lot of ups and downs in terms of entertainment. I found the whole subplot with the movie director being infatuated with Aquamarine very interesting, but it also took me 3 attempts to be able to get through it. And just like on the other episodes where I fell asleep, I don't think that either the story or the pacing are bad. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. And finally, will I keep watching Oshinoko? I am not going to, because I wasn't invested in the story, but I do think that it lays down a really interesting story for the kids to solve in the future episodes. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. This makes the total 38 minus 4, 34. So now all the episodes are done, but we have a 4-way tie between Naruto, Dandadan, Psycho Pass, and Dr. Stone. So if your favorite anime or the one you were rooting for is any of these four, consider yourself a winner. But I really wanted to select just one winner, and to my surprise, I went to my anime list and Dr. Stone, Psycho Pass, and Dandadan all have the same rating. So then I just went to IMDb, and from those three, the one that has the highest rating is none other than Dandadan. Dandadan is crowned as the best first episode from this list. Congratulations, Dandadan, you are absolutely goated. If you made it all the way to this part of the video, I actually really appreciate it because I am sure this video is going to be the longest video that I've made so far. We're also really close to hitting 10K on YouTube, for which I will be doing a giveaway later. So if you want to be a part of that and you want to support the channel, please consider liking and subscribing. Let me know in the comments which of these episodes is actually your favorite. Mine is between Dandadan and Naruto, so I am happy with the result. And also, if you think that I wasn't objective, be sure to let me know, but I promise that I was applying the holy bias protection rules. I have nothing else to say to you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.
Get back, Jojo!